help women save lives and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. And she just came out. She told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. But we had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I am Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. Language. Why is it important? Is it important? How can we mess it up when discussing abortion? We will talk about language. This will be an in-depth topic. We get asked about this a lot, so this is part one of 2 podcasts. Part 2 will come out after this one. So just know that this is a 2-part series covering language and the abortion issue. And to help me on this wonderful language podcast is someone who has never misspoke in his entire life. And that is Mr. Steve Carlin, the co-author of What to Say When To. Steve, welcome.
Hey, glad to be here. I'm going to bring the Riz to the show today. We're going to pop off a little bit and only good vibes.
That hoodie is tight. We will get more on that later as we discuss language.
This
Heather,
vibe is totally sus in this room.
you look cold.
Okay. This is a new slang that I'm learning about today.
I didn't know it. My teenagers had to tell me. So tight. God bless the 1990s. Everything was so great. Michael Jackson, he was tight. Michael Jordan, he was tight. MC Hammer was definitely tight. 4x4 trucks were tight. Tight was just like awesome, cool, legit. Riz.
Yeah, hi Riz.
And then tight died, sadly. I try to keep it alive.
R.I.P.
My teenagers just make fun of me if I say something's tight. So tight was replaced by cold. Like, that's cold.
I don't like it.
I love it.
Tight makes sense. Cold doesn't make sense.
None of it makes sense. Oh, Riz makes sense? What the heck is Riz?
I don't say that except for on the special language edition of the 40 Days for Life podcast.
I like cold. And I discovered it at a sports banquet for my high schoolers because the football team came on and they had their uniforms and one of the players yelled, "We look cold."
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah, that's sick. And I knew what sick was, but I was like, we look cold. Like,
But not cold, not cool. Like cold is better than cool. Colder than cool.
cold is like ice.
Oh, like Outcast. What's cooler than being cool?
Ice
cold.
cold.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
I've reformed my ways. I've repented, and I am now in favor of
cold.
'cause I love Outcast.
Absolutely. So we look cold, and this just shows the importance of language in our modern society because these words just evolve, and maybe you don't have no idea, what we're talking about. But for those who remember the '90s, tight was it. It was in pop culture. It was in music, and I don't know why it died, because it makes. I guess it doesn't make any sense at all.
It was pretty fetch.
Yeah. Good one.
There you go. Fetch.
And then legit was like the less cool tight. And part of that was MC Hammer because he, as a great philosopher, wrote "Too legit to quit," which is what I think should be a phrase for the pro-life movement. We're too legit to quit, and bringing that back. But then legit became, once he released that song, it was like, man, your grades are legit.
I'm always glad because we sometimes send each other photos of the food we cook. And so, I'm always grateful where you're like, man, those pizzas are legit. I'm like, all right, I have passed the test. Sean approves of my pizza pies.
You sent me those pizzas. That was unbelievable. And you sent me a picture of your brick oven.
Yeah, it doesn't look very pretty, but it makes a mean pie.
I don't know what a pretty brick oven looks like. You
Clay
said
or
that.
porcelain or something.
This
is a pile of bricks.
I was like, why is he trying to tell me that he's sorry that it doesn't look great?
I got the pieces from a construction store.
Nice. You felt fine after consuming the pizzas, I assume.
When it gets up to like 750 degrees, it wasn't cold, but it was cold.
It was cold. The pizza was cold.
Ice cold.
Yeah. Yeah. I still say bad to the bone, and people make fun of me, and I don't care. It's out of the 80s. It's before me, but like.
Do you notice how you pick up just things from your friends, your family members, your acquaintances? Like you just pick up sayings that you would never say. Bad to the bone is one I've never said before, but I picked it up from you and use it routinely.
It is very appropriate in many different scenarios.
What about sweet?
Yeah, I'm a big sweet guy. That's sweet.
Yeah.
Boom.
I use that.
I love boom.
Boom,
I
yeah.
text boom to y'all, other people. I've texted boom to Jody a bunch when
Y'all,
something happens.
by the way, will never go out of style.
No.
When I was in high school, I tried to start one of these buzzwords, but it didn't work.
What was this?
Dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. You tried to start a buzzword?
Yeah.
Was this out of your
thought I could do it.
ridiculous garage band?
It was that era for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like Taylor Swift has her eras and I have my eras.
But Riz, what do you think Riz is?
Ooh, I think it's charisma.
Yeah. You got no, because my oldest daughters will tell their younger brother, you have no Riz. And he's like, no, I got Riz. And I had to get a translation from my daughter.
Okay, I have a funny one. Speaking of translation, since we're on the topic of language,
You've got Riz.
This
Steve.
should not go without it.
Naturally.
Riz is not included in this, but
Riz is also like you could be a player.
My son got a date for prom this spring.
Okay.
And he's like walking through the hall in between classes, and the girl's like little brother like passes him like, Big Riz, Big Riz.
Yeah. That's happened to my son Seamus because same thing. He asked a girl to homecoming or whatever, and it's like, you got Riz. This just shows what we have said for many years, okay? So I was discerning the priesthood in high school, which I thank God I was doing because it kept me out of trouble. I didn't want to not get into seminary. So, but I hung out with like everybody, the good kids, the bad kids, all that stuff. I was trying to evangelize. And I would say, this sounds terrible, but like I was like a pretty mature high school kid, okay? And I was an idiot. So all high school boys are morons. That's my and it doesn't matter. It's not their fault.
Scarcely human.
They've done nothing wrong. The best like high school kids are still like, you got Riz, you know, and you're like, this is like the most mature valedictorian going to MIT, you know, and that's just the way it is, which makes high school so fun. And as Mary Lisa has pointed out, some of the high school doesn't leave you even when you're 42. I don't know if she's referencing me or somebody else, but that's just the thing about high school boys. And it's so different because it's not the case for the girls. I mean, my daughters are like very mature. They're much more reasonable. It's just totally different. I mean, the fact that guys are always light years behind women
Acting a fool.
in maturity is so real. That's why this nonsense. Like, we live in a patriarchy. No, we don't. The men are idiots until they're like 25 or 30, you know? And so it is kind of funny to see that, like, Mary Lisa always laughs. She's like, high school men have, like, boys have just not changed. Like, you're yelling the same or different dumb phrases when they like show your photo, and it doesn't matter if you're like the worst behaved kid, the best behaved kid. It's like all the same. It's universal, and I like it. I don't mind that we were all idiots in high school. It was part of the fun.
I agree.
I'll still say tight.
tight.
I tell you what's tight are these mugs. These are tight. Actually, when I brought this home, my son said, "That's cold." Like with the black and the
In
silver.
more ways than one, son.
And then this one got a cold comment from my high schoolers as well. These are cold. I tell you something else that's cold. What to Say When Part 2 pre-order. That's cold. And who's gonna think it's not cold? Blame Baronet.
I learned these things from my friends' kids, especially the teenagers. Also, just a couple of years ago, I had somebody who was barely Gen Z. She was right on that millennial Gen Z cusp. And I would frequently have to go to her and say, hey, I don't know what this means. When we'd look at social media, I don't know. Like
I was there with Riz.
I don't think I've heard of Riz until today.
Riz is pretty new, I would say.
I get a tutorial from Hannah in our office, who is young.
Hannah is my go-to now.
Only a few years older than my oldest son. And
she's like just got out of college.
Yeah, and she's like, hey, tell your son this. And then my son is like, hey, tell Hannah who you work with this. And so I'm getting a full education.
Without Hannah, we would actually be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
In this office of just connecting with the youth. Without my high school kids, I'd be clueless on all this.
Yeah.
And, but Riz was confusing to me because I didn't know if it was like something inappropriate or something, and it's not. It's you've got charisma, you've got game. I mean, you got game.
That's still a thing, right? Or no?
It is for us, but I don't know. Have you heard like you got game? I think Riz.
I feel like that was more of a '90s thing, right?
It was. I think Riz replaced that very funny line out of the movie Friday that we won't say. But yeah, you call that game? But yeah, he's like eating out of the fridge. But like, I think he farts. That's what happens. And he's like, "You call that game?"
High school boys.
Yeah, high school boys. So that's kind of been replaced with Riz.
The opposite, I believe, is cooked. Have you heard this? Like, oh man, like something goes wrong, we are so cooked.
Yeah, I've heard that. I like that.
But then that can also, Hannah tells me that could also mean drugs. Like like you're cooked on drugs.
Double meaning.
I didn't know. Careful. I had to have a boss explain to me when I was like working my tuxedo sales job in high school. Because the boss, I had a number of different bosses that were all on drugs. I didn't realize it at the time. They kept firing.
They did their best work when they were on those drugs.
Kept firing my manager and keeping me. And I was like, how come I'm not getting fired? And they're like, well, you're not on drugs. I was like, isn't that an HR violation to tell me that? But everything under the sun. I didn't know what that was. And the boss was like, yeah, well, I mean, it was the 70s. We were doing everything under the sun. And I didn't know that was a drug reference.
Oh, I did not know that either.
I thought initially it's like everything immoral. And maybe it can mean that. I don't know. But it was specifically, as he explained, a drug reference that you're just doing all these drugs.
Well,
I was like, well, that's terrible.
We may need to edit this. We'll see. We never know.
Oh, great. Language is important, Steve.
There's a particular word that some people think is just a tame word. And some people think is a very, very bad word.
Yeah.
And we are routinely, as a matter of course, editing that word out of the podcast for those who may or may not understand how it will be interpreted.
This is an accusation and an accurate one against me specifically. I was using language that I thought was appropriate. Apparently it wasn't, which is why we need a 2-part language series on language. And so, you know what? I'll own it. I think it is appropriate. But we don't want to offend the listeners. But in proper context, it's not a curse word. It's just, anyways.
It's not appropriate.
There was one time.
This is like one of the episodes I definitely don't want my wife.
And I don't have the cleanest mouth either. But it's
Jill was one time editing the podcast, and she's like, "Oh, Sean did it again." And so she decided to switch the camera cut to me, and you know what that cut showed is me writing "Sean said" on my notes.
Oh,
so
wow!
There's nowhere to run.
Oh my gosh!
I won't defend myself. I'll just follow. I'll follow my sword.
You're gonna own it.
But you all know it was appropriate given the context.
I was not offended. I'll tell you that.
Okay, exactly. Heather wasn't offended either. She's pretending to be offended. It was not an attack against women. It was an attack against a particular guy, actually, if I remember the context accurately.
Paul exhorts us to be cautious of the sensitivities of our weaker brethren, and so I think we did the right thing by being extra careful.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, Paul also spoke the truth, so it was kind of a balancing act there. So yeah, language matters. Tight is dead. Riz is in. Cold is in. Bad to the Bone is being propped up by me, and I've apparently evangelized you. And is there anything else?
Sus is in.
Sus is in. What is sus?
Suspicious or suspect.
Oh, that's sus. That's sus. Questionable was great. Like some guys, like, I mean, I was an all-state quarterback, and immediately you're like, questionable.
Wrecked is one.
Wrecked. I think for abusing alcohol, it's the same. Hammered, slammed, sloshed, tanked.
There are a lot of
There's a lot of them.
It's almost as though ingesting large quantities of alcohol does not spur the creative process.
Three sheets to the wind. I didn't know what that was. Somebody had to explain that to me, which isn't a Morgan Wallen song, actually.
Yes.
Language is very powerful. And the problem, as fun as this conversation is, we'll move on. The problem is that evil and lies are built on language, and people adapt in language. And we will not be, I guess, legalistic in this. This is kind of a common sense approach to language, because I have been corrected when giving speeches on you should say this and not that. And sometimes it's very good advice. I have been corrected with not good advice, with like nitpicking of like, what? So we said unborn for years, and now we have to say preborn.
You're getting ahead. That's one of the things in here.
It's like the pro-life version of woke that I talk about sometimes.
Yeah.
We make up who's offended, and even I would say we make up why it's inaccurate. But they are unborn. Mm-hmm. You can't say that, and you say preborn. Mm-hmm. But we don't call born children postborn. Mm-hmm. It's just, anyways. So this is not what we're going to do, where we're going to be like, the end of the world will happen.
We may have some disagreements in here. We'll see.
I know.
I'm ready to fight.
But I definitely, like you said, I don't want to come at this as being so super nitpicky, but it's good to kind of think about these things and talk about these things. So.
Well, I'll bring my Riz.
Bring your Riz. Go on. Riz. Bring it on.
Okay. First, let's have a little psychological look at language. This is great. Basically, every 10 years, as we've pointed out, and longer sometimes, things like tight go away. It's very tragic. But Michael Knowles has a great book called Speechless: Controlling Words, Controlling Minds. And it basically talks about how language has done a lot of damage, particularly over the last century. It happened to be, obviously, the bloodiest century. But there's a great quote in here. In the 1970s, feminists helped political correctness break into mainstream public discourse. Feminists sought to overthrow a culture they decried as patriarchal by making language fickle, which itself required a fundamental restructuring of the political order. And so, basically now that's expanded to justify everything, whether it be abortion, whether it be trans. We live in a patriarchal society. Men are running the world and driving women into the ground. And it's obviously completely inaccurate. Men are at the weakest point probably in our history.
If this patriarchy gets much worse, you're going to start to see like these rich fat cats just paying women to abort their babies so they can get back to work sooner.
Oh, God.
How about that?
That was brutal. You're suggesting companies run by white males are paying generously for women to travel and get an abortion so they can get back in the cubicle?
Yeah, that seems to be the real Handmaid's Tale, doesn't
There's
it?
some patriarchy for you. So what do you think? Do we live in a patriarch?
Sure. Yeah. We live in a patriarch.
Structurally, we do. This is Jordan Peterson's point. He's like, and we better.
Yes.
If we don't, we're in trouble. And it's not the men, it's the women that are in trouble if we don't have responsibilities that men are supposed to take, which is protecting and providing and helping, then we're in trouble.
I think anything that is a male-dominated field, a male-dominated kind of industry, if it's primarily because men are created a certain way and women are created a certain way, and men are better at some things than women are, and women are better at some things than men are, and some, one can't do the other. There's there's going to always be, as long as we are seen as there's differences, then we live in a patriarchy and it's all bad.
Yeah.
And that's not the right way to look at it.
Yeah, and it's like market driven, like more women because they're nurturing by nature. Of course, there are some men that teach third grade, but more women are teachers, more women are nurses, more women, and of course, women are doctors, women are CEOs of hospitals, all that. They can't base it on the exceptions. But overall, what the feminists argue is we pulled all the electrical engineers in the country and 82% of them are men. And they're like, but that's because more men want to go into that and fewer women want to go into that.
Right.
And they're like, no, it's because they hate women.
Massachusetts, I think it was, just announced grants to help bring about equity in the field of construction, which I thought was great. And I shared with my wife, and she's like, yeah, because I grew up playing with dolls and wanting to pour concrete.
Yeah.
You want young women to be hanging around Matt Damon and Ben Affleck from Good Will Hunting? That's what we want? Sitting by the truck drinking beer for lunch? That's our goal? It's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Well, the NFL is clearly sexist. I mean, where are the female
quarterbacks? Where are the female offensive tackles?
Yeah.
So
female football teams.
Yeah, the market-driven thing is crazy. There's also fewer women to choose from because some choose to stay at home.
Right.
And men overall don't do that. It's
right.
very rare. You have a stay-at-home dad. It happens, but it's rare. And everybody kind of acknowledges that. I think and certainly Michael Knowles' point in Speechless is just how dangerous this is because we get inside our own heads and we create problems that we don't exist. And Jordan Peterson makes the point, it just shows how ungrateful we are. Like, we live in a great, free, just society with many problems that we have to work on. Mm-hmm. But like, we have a great life. Women have a great life. Men have a great life. There is more freedom and opportunity for every race, every religion, all of this stuff, more so in the United States of America than in the history of the world. It's phenomenal. And of course we have struggles. But to say that we live in this tyrannical patriarchy is total BS.
Right.
And it gets in people's heads. And it's a horrible thing to tell a girl or a young woman, or a man for that matter, that they're a tyrant and that the system's rigged against them. Mm-hmm. It's just total nonsense.
Yeah, it shows how important language is, though, because it creates sort of the frame for the entire discussion. The words that are used, the abortion industry has done this sort of masterfully. We saw something we've talked about for a long time, Bill Clinton talking about safe, legal, and rare.
Genius.
You break it down, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Why would you want it to be rare if it's not something that's bad? Do it all the time. No one's talking about making like root canals rare. If you need a root canal, you go get a root canal, and there's nobody out praying on their knees on the concrete in the rain in front of the dental office. So why would you need to make it rare? But oh, well, that sounds nice. It kind of gives you the like comfortable middle ground. I'm not want them like aborting all these babies at like 9 months as they're coming out of the womb. But I don't want to be locking women in prison for having babies. Okay, we'll take the nice, reasonable, moderate position. And the abortion industry is good at this. That's why language is so important to them, because they start talking about anything other than language. They don't really like to even say abortion. It's like reproductive rights, the right to choose. What's your favorite euphemism? Do you have a favorite euphemism for what they call abortion?
Mine is probably product of conception.
Okay.
When they talk about the actual baby. But they have product of conception, fetal tissue, pregnancy tissue, contents of the uterus. That's one. So anything to avoid saying baby. They do say fetus, but they've also kind of started shying away from that because more and more people are starting to think, okay, but fetus is a stage of life. And so
they've got the fetal ultrasounds of
right.
Say, hey, there's my baby.
Right.
I like reproductive rights. I'm kind of old school. Because we have reproductive rights. You and I have exercised them and have children, thank God. Mm-hmm. But the problem isn't reproducing. That's natural, actually. The problem is killing your reproduction.
Right.
That's not good.
This comes after reproduction.
Ford doesn't make an F-150, and when it gets to the end of the assembly line, they blow it up. They protect their reproduction. They don't kill it. So I think that that's always like but I'm a big hats off to safe, legal, and rare. I think that's the most brilliant pro-abortion phrase they've ever came up with, and it worked. Clinton was a pro-life governor of Arkansas. They, of course, met with him and said, "Hey, you gotta support abortion." And he did I don't like abortion. You can find the clip on YouTube. I don't like abortion. I think abortion's horrible. Blah blah blah. But that's why I want it to be safe, because it's not unless it's legal. Genius. Safe, legal. And rare. So he gave permission to be a good person and to support abortion.
Yeah, you're reasonable.
The comfy, cozy, I'm more compassionate, and that worked. I think the advantage we have now raising our kids and doing pro-life work is they're so stupid for getting rid of it and going into la-la land with infanticide and abortion at 40 weeks and late-term abortion. That was so dumb. They could have done it behind the scenes, that's their agenda, but they just should have propped up safe, legal, and rare as kind of their front man.
Yeah.
But that ended up it went from safe, legal, and rare to safe, legal, and accessible to, doesn't matter, any of those things now. Now it's free, on demand, without apology.
Up to 40 weeks.
Right.
They should have never gotten into the week thing. We did because it's effective, but sometimes they don't. They have discipline. But when you say, well, what about, can you have an abortion at 38 weeks? Yes. They'll answer that. They didn't answer that 10 years ago. It's
a problem with them constantly craving affirmation. I think that's where this comes from, is even the suggestion that it should be rare, that you're not feeling affirmed if you're a radical abortion supporter. You're not feeling affirmed in your decision to have that abortion, and so it could never stand. I think what you're saying is Slick Willie had some riz. He was a creep, but
Slick Willie had riz, and, he had more than game. He had little extracurricular activities.
Got impeached for all his game.
Yes.
But the abortion industry is so good about making all of the positives, and I think we talk about this in Sidewalk Outreach, that there's we look at pro-life language and pro-abortion language, and all of the things that pro-choice, pro-abortion people say about abortion is all positive. That it's exercising my rights, it's being responsible, it's all these things. And it's those in and of themselves are good things. I want to exercise my rights. I want to have control of my body. Everybody wants to have control of their own body. These are all positive things. And so I think they use that. Obviously, they are encouraging people to stop there and to not think too deep and too far into beyond those terms. So no uterus, no opinion, which it can't be that anymore.
I like that one.
You can't say no uterus, no opinion.
Transphobic.
Yeah, it's transphobic now. So it's not your uterus, not your opinion. You wouldn't have said anything was wrong with that particular phrase 10 and 15 years ago, but...
I really like reproductive justice, because I think it's funny when they just start putting justice on everything. And I want to do it myself. I want some Doritos justice. I'm hungry. I need some Doritos.
Doritos and there's no calories.
Yeah.
That's Dorito justice.
Cool Ranch. We were ranking.
Is there anything better than that? No.
We were doing ranking my favorite sodas a few weeks ago. We could do a ranking my favorite generic Doritos. The generic Doritos are better than the actual Doritos.
Are blue Doritos a real thing?
That's not true.
Blue?
Yeah. Is that just my imagination, or have I seen blue Doritos? Now I'm getting on a tangent.
I am unaware.
No.
I mean, the Cool Ranch comes in the blue pack. There is a gas
not what I'm
station
thinking of.
in Wisconsin that sells blueberry-flavored generic Doritos. I've not tried them.
Did y'all have the Dorito Verde ever?
No.
Is that a Texas thing?
I think so.
Legit. They're seasonal, or they got rid of them. It was like Surge out of the 90s. Verde Doritos they're spicy. They're phenomenal. And I don't think that they make them anymore.
There's nothing better than when you get a Dorito and it just, something went wrong with the machine and it's 5 times the amount of whatever the little seasonings are.
That's making my mouth water right now just thinking about that.
You need Doritos justice.
I support Dorito justice. And it just shows you can just add, you just have to make stuff up.
Yeah.
Kids
don't want to go to bed. We need bedtime justice.
Yeah. Yeah. The Nazis did it. Certainly the South did it with states' rights. you don't have a right to own someone. But it sounds good. States' rights. And I don't have a lot of tolerance. We'll probably get some emails in here, but like, look, I'm a proud Southerner. My great-grandparents came over from Ireland. We didn't have slaves. All that stuff. The whole, like, it wasn't about slavery, it was about states' rights. That's just not true. If slavery didn't exist, we wouldn't have had a civil war. That's just a historical fact. But I mean, it was about the war of northern aggression. Like, and this is how you get woke movements. You're like, that's not true. It's good that the North won. Okay? Robert E. Lee was one of the greatest generals in the history of our country. He was. Absolutely. There's no doubt. He was on the wrong side. But he was unbelievably brilliant. He's the only one that gave, well, there were some others, but that gave the Confederacy a real shot. And the fact that the Southern boys are tougher than them Northern boys, I still believe that. But like, it's good that the North won. And I don't understand. That just shows like even states' rights has survived with some. I mean, this is like not a common thing anymore. But when I was growing up, when I was taught about the Civil War, I was taught that it was about states' rights. And I remember thinking, I thought it was about slavery.
States' right to what?
Yeah.
I took my son to Fort Sumter one time where the Civil War started. He's like 7, and like here's a souvenir. You can buy like a Civil War hat, like the soldiers wore, the blue or the gray. And he said, which one was the good side again? And the guy at the counter said, depends on who you ask.
Oh, jeez. Oh,
that's
my
great.
Gosh.
But that's hopefully he was kidding, but probably wasn't. But yeah, that's that's a problem, right? But that's the power of that phrase, states' rights.
Yeah.
And it is exactly the argument for abortion today.
Well, and it just drives me crazy, but the fact that women's rights so much coincides with abortion, being pro-abortion in our society still today, that's what really bothers me, because it automatically pits the woman against the child, which is not okay. And that's the opposite of what we want to do in the pro-life movement. True pro-lifers don't pit a baby against, they don't fall into that trap. Like, no, it's not about you, it's about the baby. Well, no, it's both. Abortion is not good for either one, for women and children. Another favorite one was electrical cardiac activity, which we've mentioned before. You can't say heartbeat. Can't even say heart tones, which I know Live Action had one of those undercover videos where the abortion worker was correcting her and saying heart tones. It's like, oh, we can't use heart anymore.
Steve looks like right now he has electrical cardiac activity.
He does, yeah. He does
look
like,
amazing.
Thank goodness everybody in this building, I think,
appreciate
does.
that.
That's right. Yeah. Even though it's freezing in this room, hearts may start stopping.
I have some good ones, though. I have some Seinfeld references.
Oh.
I prepared for this.
I'm all in.
So you guys would be even more entertained here. So, okay. Because
the soup Nazi?
Because
it's not a real
Nazi. So I did, because you guys were so big into Seinfeld, I actually watched it last year, watched the series. I'd never seen it before. That's
terrible.
Never got Seinfeld references, so I watched it last year. I enjoyed it. I didn't think I would. Because I remember when it was on, I mean, of course I was a kid, but I remember thinking the show's stupid. Like when it would come on and whenever.
That's because you were innocent.
I was innocent.
They're mocking our selfishness. That's the essence of Seinfeld. Okay,
so here's an episode that I noticed and I thought, this is going to be worth mentioning someday. It's sorry for all of you who are not Seinfeld fans, just bear with me. It's season 3, episode 15. Elaine is very upset because a psychic is smoking while pregnant. And she says, "Don't you know that's wrong? That can harm the fetus." And it was very inconsistent with her beliefs, because there was a whole other show where she was talking about being pro-abortion and was mad at a restaurant owner because he was like, "You're nuts. Like, babies have rights and babies are babies," and all this stuff. And so she decided she wasn't going to date a guy because he was pro-life and he was like insane.
Was that Putty?
Putty.
No, it wasn't
One
Putty.
day we're going to overturn that law.
Well, maybe it was Putty, but it was a different guy that was only in it for one episode. He was helping her move a couch or something.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, but then they came back to what's famous for as the abortion episode, and Putty, She's like, well, I'm sure he's pro-choice. And then he's like, yeah, one day we're going to get enough Supreme Court justices to overturn that law. Putty was like a prophet. He knew Coney Barrett was coming.
He was the first to predict Dobbs. I was a pessimist. I didn't think it was going to happen.
And she's like, so you think I'm going to hell? Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
I'm the devil.
That was creepy. Whole nother thing. But here's another one, though, that just really got me so frustrated, and it made me scratch my head at first. It was 3 years ago, so it was before Dobbs, and I had a journalist from the Washington Post interview me. And she was very kind, kind of like an interview you had referenced previously, where she kind of seemed maybe independent, although I always just automatically assume they're all pro-abortion.
Right.
I just come at it from that perspective. But she was very kind, very charitable, didn't have the attitude that reporters typically have. And she was even complimentary, which I'm not naive enough to be like, oh, but that made me think maybe she's not so bad if she's not just completely reaming me, right? And she asked good questions, and I gave her very specific answers about, like, she asked me, what would I do if the abortionist came out and wanted to have a conversation with me? What would I say to him? And so I said, I would ask him a couple of questions, and kind of went on from there. And one of the things I had said was I would ask him when he started believing it was okay to dismember small human beings. And she misquoted me in her article. I recorded the conversation too, because I learned my lesson a long time ago. You got to record your own thing.
And it depends on what state they're in. Sometimes that's illegal.
I'm in Texas, so it's fine with me.
But if they're in a certain state and
no,
they have to know.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was legal.
Yeah.
Keep going.
This was in person.
Oh,
So,
never mind.
Yeah, she was in person. She was on
In
the
Texas.
sidewalk.
Oh,
with
you're
me.
good.
Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah. So she changed the word dismember to dismantle. And I thought that was so strange. I've never seen that before. And I was like, it was very clear what I said. Why would she? And she recorded it too. So I was like, why would she change that? And guess what? We have this guy who's brilliant in Austin. We were having this discussion with a bunch of Austin pro-lifers. And he said, because you dismember a human being, you dismantle an object.
I didn't know that.
And I was like,
Did you know that?
Oh my gosh. And that was just like this subtle way of, well, dismember is too humanizing. So we've got to change the word to dismantle.
Not in sports, because like if a defensive end gets past an offensive lineman and sacks the quarterback, they're like, you just dismantled their line.
Okay.
They don't say dismember. I think that would be too
Well,
violent.
that would be too violent.
But,
we can't talk about the violence
But
of
that's
abortion.
a great point, is that dismember is humans and dismantle is objects.
Yeah.
So you can dismantle your remote control car, but you can't dismember it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah. And I was really
I
pissed
still think
after that.
Look, I still think that in everyday language it comes across. It's not like, yes, dismantling an unborn baby. That sounds really nice. You know, they really meant as vacuum cleaner because that's an object, you know.
Yeah.
So to change that is actually, it doesn't really do a huge service, but okay. This is the controversial thing.
Here's where we get controversial.
I'm going to behave.
You don't have to.
How our culture, parentheses, including pro-life people, at least you didn't put, including those who claim to be pro-life.
Including those who claim
Arrogant.
pro-life. Yeah.
Okay.
The quotes.
How our culture, including pro-lifers, contribute to the culture of death with our language.
Yes. So everybody has heard the phrase, oh my gosh, we're pregnant. You're going to be a grandfather. You're going to be.
No, you are a grandfather, you pro-abort.
Exactly.
You're crazy.
No, but let's think about that. Okay, so there was a speech. Okay,
I was like, you're crazy, woman.
Get this in the context. So there was
Okay.
a speech that all of us were present for a few years ago, and it was a pro-life person standing up talking about how we constantly dehumanize babies and we don't recognize them as human beings and blah, blah, blah. And the next sentence, he said, my daughter is pregnant with her first child and I'm going to be a grandpa in April. And I was like, he just got through giving this speech about how we don't recognize the unborn as human beings. Why would you say the baby exists? We're always talking about how this is a life here and now. You're killing a life. So why would you? And some people think like, oh, that's nitpicky. It's not nitpicky. It's very much thinking about the baby being a baby in the future and not right now.
I think the guy's a Nazi.
No, I'm not going so far as to say that.
It's a good point because you would say, my wife just let me know that I'm a dad, like with your first, or my daughter just let me know that I'm a grandpa. But here's the problem. Here's I'm going to defend grandpa, even though you're ready to cast him to hell. Oh my gosh. Most of our generation, they grew up without abortion. And that's just, there is a common language thing where you're like, my daughter, I'm going to be a grandpa when the baby's born. I don't think that that's dehumanizing the baby. It's a focus on birth that generations before ours, that's all they had. Okay? The Chinese, ironically, celebrate conception days.
Exactly.
Okay? We're not Chinese,
right?
Number one. Number two, we've never done that culturally.
Right.
I do think there has to be a cultural compassion. Now, see, I'm being the nice one, you're the bigot. Of like, towards those, you know what I mean? It's not like a derogatory term. Like, you're not supposed to use that word anymore. It's like, it's how they spoke based on their circumstances.
It's learned. We're conditioned to it.
I think Generation Z and I think us are switching that.
That's what I'm hoping.
Okay, but you're being hard on this poor grandpa.
But I'm not the type of, this is what I said when I opened the podcast. I'm not the type that's going to be like, I can't believe you, like in public and berating people. Like, I'm
contribute
just
to the culture of death.
I'm talking about in a real life, like I'm in front of somebody and they make the mistake of saying something like that. I'm going to be like, oh, you mean, because, okay, I had a friend I remember that told me.
So you are going to correct him?
In a charitable way. So, okay,
I want to see this.
Do we have any popcorn here, guys?
Yeah. Is there any film
But I'll give
correcting
you
grandpa?
No.
My daughter is having a little baby. I'm so excited. I'm going to be a grandpa in July.
Shut up, Grandpa.
Shut up, grandpa.
No.
Not as well. How many Jews did you gas?
No.
What?
I did have a friend, though, who not very long ago found out that his sister was pregnant with her first baby. And he was so excited. So he was telling me this news. And I said, oh, my gosh, congratulations, uncle. And he goes, oh, like it hit him like, oh, I didn't say you're going to be an uncle. I said, congratulations, uncle. And he was just kind of like, whoa, I am an uncle right now. I was like, yeah. And I mean, yes, does it feel more real when you hold the baby in your arms? Obviously. But that's just one of my pet peeves. Like I don't like the mother-to-be pregnancy centers saying we're going to give a mother-to-be a baby shower. Just
what about
totally
a bun
defeats.
in the oven?
That's not saying the bun is the baby.
No, I agree. But I'm asking because now I'm really interested.
No, I don't have an argument against bun in the oven.
To be, yeah, and that's just a weird phrase, anyways. Because
mother-to-be,
young women right now in like elementary school could be mothers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have a funny story about that.
Okay.
So here in College Station, at one of the HEBs, when I was in college,
you're at the grocery store.
We're at the grocery store, and I'm with a bunch of friends. And, we're all riding in a car. We're going grocery store shopping for a dinner or something that we're going to make. And there's parking spaces that say reserved for mothers to be. And I didn't say anything then. We were looking at it, and we were frustrated because the parking lot was so full, and we couldn't park anywhere.
You took that from a pregnant woman.
No. This is it's not how you think it's going to be. My friend who
my friend
my female,
I'm asking for a friend.
My female friend who was in the car with her boyfriend at the time, they're now married, it's super cute. She said park there to her boyfriend who was driving, and he's like, I can't park there. That's not. And she goes, well, I'm an expectant mother. I expect to be a mother someday. I'm a mother to be. And he's like, we all had a good laugh. And she is a mother now. But
did she park there?
I don't think we parked there, no.
My wife was probably pregnant with our third baby.
Probably,
And
yes.
had to park way out wind. Like,
during that time.
language matters.
So you mentioned expectant. I have been criticized before for saying expectant mother and for saying baby on the way. The baby's not on the way, the baby's there. And I will grant no quarter to anybody who gives me any trouble for saying either of those things. Expectant mother is okay.
Yeah.
You're okay with that?
Well, expecting, because what are you expecting?
The baby is on the way.
I agree.
You're expecting to birth the baby. So that's, yeah.
All right, we're all on the same page.
We're on the same page with that one. I don't expect to have a baby existing later on. That's not what that means. So
bring up Bill Maher real quick.
Bring up Bill Maher.
All right. Bill Maher, years ago, this is like before Bill Maher started to, not turn, but you know how he's just saying things that we agree with. Bloomberg, the mayor of New York, wanted to outlaw big gulps. You remember this?
Yeah. Big gulps, huh?
Bill Maher said, "This is why people hate liberals.
I'm not liberal."
This is why people hate pro-lifers."
Ooh. Shots fired.
And there's such a huge language problem with how they actually got in this horrible satanic abortion stuff.
I think
careful.
I know, and that's what I'm saying. I don't want to become like
get
a
the
language
emails.
police.
I promise you most people agree with you.
Yeah.
They would yell at the grandpa.
I'm gonna
You're not
take-
going to be a grandpa.
I'm not
You're
saying-
a grandpa now.
I'm not saying
You're
yell at the grandpa.
now, you dehumanizing psychopath. What?
I'm just saying, for all of us, it's good to rethink these things.
It is. It's good.
Because what are we actually saying? Language. Again, the whole point of this podcast is language means something. And when we say certain things and we're not really even thinking through like what that conveys because we're just used to saying it, we're just conditioned.
Well, there's literal meanings and there's connotations, right? There's framing. And this is where I would take Heather's side on something. Heather instructed me on when we talk about pro-life laws, how do we frame it? Are we talking about an abortion ban, a national abortion ban? Or do we talk about protections for unborn children? And I think that's a good point because you hear the word ban and it frightens people, like for right or for wrong. People get scared by the word ban.
Yeah.
But pro-life, like you've got all these wishy-washy people in the middle. We know, I studied survey research and the science and art of survey research extensively in school. And the way that you can ask the same exact question and you can phrase it slightly different and it changes the way people respond. And I think you would find a lot more Americans responsive positively to pro-life protections than to abortion bans.
Okay, you have some
Right.
really good examples coming up.
Yes, I do. I don't know which ones you're looking at.
I'll read it for you.
Okay.
A friend of yours, who you're now throwing under the bus, I said, "I went into the hospital with no baby and I came out with a baby." And she quickly realized how inconsistent that sounded.
I didn't even have to say anything. She knew it. I didn't give her a dirty look. This was online. So there was no maybe she could sense my dirty look through the computer.
I bet you she could. She probably talked to that poor grandpa who you yelled at. And then there was another one.
Yeah, this was recent, this next example.
This is good. This past January, a woman from Silent No More in an interview at the March for Life said, "My mother forced my husband and I to abort what would have been our first child."
And again,
So I think that's inaccurate. I agree with you on that. You could say, to defend her, on a technicality, that it would have been her first infant or one of those things. But we know it. We know she's just kind of talking and not thinking about it.
yeah. I don't know. I guess I've become.
This is important. The reason I'm actually on your side is, as much grief as I'm giving you, is this is very important with the transgender debate.
Right.
Because there's no such thing as a transgender person. They don't exist. It's impossible for them to exist. They can think that they exist. They can label themselves however they want. But a man can never become a woman, and a woman can never become a man. They can pretend to, and it can even be fun or cute or hilarious, like the movie Tootsie or Miss Doubtfire. Because the reason it's fun and Robin Williams is hysterical in that movie is because he's actually a man. He's pretending to be an old English grandma.
Right.
That's what makes it funny.
Right.
And now that's like a transphobic movie.
It's the same thing on the marriage front, right? Like I've long said, I'm not opposed to same-sex marriage. There's no such thing as
right.
same-sex marriage.
And that's a tough one because
Yeah.
when you're talking in reference and it's like gay marriage, which doesn't exist, it's a made up thing. But yeah, the transgender thing, I will not say biological males. There's just males.
Mm-hmm.
There's this whole thing, and then of course the nonsense. And this is why I don't think that's going to last. Steve, you were assigned male at birth.
Oh yeah.
You were assigned.
They have
it.
that in commercials.
Then
I
in
love
the 8th
that.
grade, you were assigned algebra homework.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just like, what? I
Yeah.
wasn't assigned birth.
Right. No, you were recognized by
The
people
only
with
thing
common
that-
sense.
I guess you could turn that around and be like, who assigned me
Yeah.
And why?
Yeah.
and why?
Yeah. Exactly. That's the important question. Okay. I don't want this to be nothing but just a rant thing, although that's fun too. I have solutions. So
Oh.
if
So
yes,
the grandpa who you just cast away into the SS can
grandpa
have
has
redemption.
has redemption.
I'm going to be a grandpa in April.
So I have some examples. So if a man and a woman, let's say, have 3 born children and are pregnant with their 4th child, we have 4 children, including 1 on the way. Sometimes people say 1 in utero to get very specific. 1 in the oven. There you go. Sometimes couples don't want to announce right away that they're pregnant. So I'm not like berating a couple who's not ready to announce that. But I know that many, and maybe this is because of the pro-life bubble, I've even seen on email signatures from friends, some who are volunteers, and they have full-time jobs and they have all these other things going on in their life, but they're very passionately pro-life and they have thought through, these things. Mm-hmm. And they'll put like mother to, such and such. They'll list their kids' names and they'll say, and Susie coming in January or whatever, right? Like they're acknowledging their child right then and there, or sometimes they're acknowledging a child they lost.
Sure.
Like Benny in heaven,
right.
Or something like that, which I think is beautiful. I don't think you have to. I don't think parents should be forced to publicly announce, oh, we're pregnant and our child was just lost in miscarriage. Like I'm not saying any of those things. I'm just saying kind of in general, you have a normal pregnancy. You are, 8 months away versus 8 days away from giving birth. You're the mother of that child included.
Are you okay with 1 on the way?
It makes sense.
And another one due in February?
Yeah, another one due in February.
I think due is fine.
Yeah, because they're due to be born. That's what we're talking about.
Born.
Not due to start existing.
Yeah, they don't. And that's why I think 1 on the way is fine. That's a location issue. It's not an existence issue.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm fine with that.
Yes.
I like what you put in here about how far congratulations goes, particularly with it happens with 2 extremes. One, the woman who gets pregnant out of wedlock.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And there needs to be a level of, obviously, she's not proud of the circumstances. Obviously, it's not ideal circumstances. We don't celebrate it.
Right.
We don't condone it.
This is where the church gets it wrong, too.
Don't say that. That's what everybody says.
No, I'm saying, like, churches equate celebrating the life of a baby, throwing an unwed mother, a single mother, a baby shower with, well, we're saying that it's totally fine that
I don't think so.
I've not experienced that.
I'll disagree with that.
I've seen that.
Okay, well, that's good. Well, it's not good. That's not the problem. The problem is, yeah, great, awesome, for sure, because sex before marriage isn't a sin. That's the widespread, I think, acceptance, which is that there's no more stigma to a negative degree.
Sure, yeah.
And when a guy's like, I got my girlfriend pregnant, it's just, there's no more scandal in it, or maybe the scandal isn't to the level that it was or it should be. I'll say that and get some hate mail. But like, you're supposed to save sex for marriage. And that doesn't mean that you live in, the 1950s. That's the best way to do it, sociologically speaking.
Yeah.
If you're Christian, then that's the teaching.
Yeah.
But if you're not, you're better off not having sex until you're married. Mm-hmm. That's just a statistical fact from sociology. So
But the baby is not the sin, and that's why
Right.
it pressures so many church-going women into having an abortion because they're made to feel that the baby is the sin.
I know that, and we've worked with a lot of
So-
those women, or the dad's the pastor. I mean, we had twins saved here,
Right.
from Houston, and the
Right.
dad was the pastor, and she was freaking out, and then
Right.
she chose life, and it's this beautiful like story. But I don't have a problem. I don't think we need to be like, well, you shouldn't have gotten pregnant. That's horrible.
Right.
But that when they're like, well, I'm expecting this happens to me. I guess the biggest scenario when it's not like a mom that we work with who chooses life, but a waitress at a restaurant where you can tell she doesn't have, and I tip like crazy, but like you see like pregnant women working and doing their best. They're not married or they don't have a wedding band on. And Mary Lisa and I will always be like, well, how far along are you? I let her say that because I'll be like, how far along are you? She's like,
I'm not pregnant.
I'm not pregnant.
You.
Yeah. So,
I almost said Sean's bad word.
yeah. Oh gosh. Look at how the judgmentalism is like overflowing out of Heather today. It's unbelievable. So
Justice.
yeah, your judgmental justice. That's what I need. Besides the Doritos. But we always say, they're like, oh, I'm 22 weeks. Congratulations. That's so exciting. And all of that.
Yeah.
And they always light up because you don't know the reactions that they're getting. So okay, so that's one extreme. The other extreme is what we live in, which is we're announcing once again we're having our fifth baby.
Yeah.
It happened with me when we had Seamus, our
Don't
third.
you know how that happens?
And I'm just like, is it too hard to fake it? Can you just say congratulations and get the hell out of here? Like, it's just so weird that we're like we're happy. It's not like Mary Lisa's sitting there going, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant again. I can't do this again. I'm freaking out. And then people are like, well, congratulations. Like, not reading the room. But we're excited. And
Yeah. That's the thing.
like what we want the baby, it's our baby.
That's your reproductive choice.
We'll raise the baby. I'm exercising reproductive justice and reproductive choice and reproductive health care. And you're criticizing me for it. That to me is the other extreme that happens.
It is,
all the time.
and I know too many because we live in our world where we know a lot of people with big families. I've known couples who are afraid to tell their parents that they're pregnant with their 6th and their 7th, and I'm like, oh.
And I did not have that, thank God. And we definitely
They're not living at home with the parents, so it's not like the parents are like, oh, we got another one you're throwing on us. Like
we don't
it's
we don't have that on either side of the family, thank God.
Yeah.
My siblings and her siblings all have a billion kids, so it's that part's easy. But it's the random people or friends or just people you meet, and they're like, I remember one lady was like, it just must suck to be you.
oh my gosh.
She saw Mary Lisa pregnant. And I was like, I said, it doesn't. And that's a really sad statement that you said. And she like put her head down and was like, I'm sorry.
I got this one time
Which is good of her.
at a pro-life dinner.
Oh.
I was speaking at a pro-life dinner, and it was like shortly after my 4th was born. And so people are at the table are like making pleasant conversation. Oh, tell me about your family. Like, oh, my wife just had our 4th. Oh, wow. That's a big family. I was like, well, that's a good start. And
That's great.
And I got, how's your wife feel about that? And I
locked her up in the basement. She's not allowed to talk or vote.
Gosh. I don't know. But they're again pro-lifers.
Hold on, I want to get to the end of
the
this story.
culture of death.
I want to how does your wife feel about it?
I honestly and accurately responded, she hopes next time we have twins.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Nice.
Well,
Very
and
good.
the thing is, this is what I always do because I can be a smart aleck, which is why we have to edit this stinking podcast. But so here's the odd thing about that. You and I, as men, compared to other men who maybe don't have children, we know the difficulties of pregnancy. We definitely know. Y'all have been through a lot. We know the difficulties of pregnancy. We know how miserable breastfeeding is. We know how miserable teething is for babies, which is my big question for God when we meet on my judgment day. this has to happen to babies. This is part of the fall of man.
You once told me you could theologically explain genocide, but
Totally.
teething is
I explain the Nazis to the kids all the time.
Oh, God.
I can't explain teething in a baby. They have to scream all night. It's violent. Why can't your teeth just grow like fingernails? You don't even think about it. You don't feel it. But the little innocent baby has to suffer. There's a little argument for the atheists. I get it, the cruel God that we serve. So, I understand that. And then, of course, mom has to get up, and you've got to rub the stuff and all of that. So when we're having our 5th or 6th or 7th or 8th baby and they're like, how's your wife? It's like, but she knows more about having a baby than you. Either you don't have a baby or whatever. Like, she's done this before. And, because one time I was like, she's really upset. It's not mine.
Usually what I've gotten is...
All right.
Just to mess with them. And then I said, well, that's just my other wife has 6 kids.
Oh,
So
wow.
because if they're going to insult us or we're going to go into crazy land, why can't we do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just play along.
I've sometimes responded, you don't think it's weird that I have 5 kids. You think it's weird that they all have the same mom.
Yes. Because I've heard
He's
friends
going
get
like-
asked that.
NBA reference.
Doug Johnson has gotten asked that. Like because he was a stay-at-home dad for a while.
Yeah.
He would often be with all the kids, just him, and people would give him looks in public, and oftentimes he would get that's all from the same mom. Like people would ask that.
We get that a lot, but I find that actually positive. And part of the problem is divorce is very prevalent, and a lot of people, and
They're used to having half siblings.
Yeah, they are. It's totally. I have 2 stepbrothers, so that happens.
Yeah,
and it's just more common now, even though it's not good. But it's always followed up in our experience. This has probably happened 6 or 7 times with like, that's awesome. Like y'all have 6 kids together, or 8 kids together, like that's cool.
Yeah.
Every anniversary we talked about, Mary Lisa's birthday is our anniversary. So every time it comes around, we go to Papados. Okay, I've talked about this before, and we go at like 3 in the afternoon when no one's in there, and we take all the kids, and my in-laws go, and so we just have this massive table and all the kids, and every single time the waiter is like, this is so cool. Like, this is your birthday and your anniversary, and you have all these 8 kids. Like, that's so awesome. And it's like super positive. Of course, it helps kids behave.
Yeah.
And I mean, well, you and I, we went there recently, and the waitress remembered because we were there like 6 months ago, and it's like, that was so cool. I told Mary Lisa about that. She's like, y'all were so fun. Your kids were beautiful.
That's awesome.
Like, you're the one with all them kids. That was us. But
It's also fun if like one of them has basketball practice. They're like, wow, what a big, beautiful family of, and this isn't even all of them.
yeah, we've got, well, that's happened with us. Like, we try to feel like normal people by like going out to lunch with Timothy, and he's just sitting there, and they're like, oh, is this your oldest? We're like, he's the youngest of 8. And so it's fun. Obviously you get kind of those comments and the negative, but I'm actually really surprised how many positive ones we get.
That's
I've
good.
kind of
I'm
gotten
glad to hear that.
some of the split decision one. Like you've got a new baby, your wife's, oh man, what a beautiful baby. Like, oh, congratulations, guys. But we're done. We're done.
Yep.
It's like, are you guys done? I don't think. I hope not. I don't know.
Ask God.
I don't know. Why are you asking me if I'm like, oh, you finally found the Dorito with all the seasonings on it. Are you done eating Doritos?
Are you done is pretty common.
Yeah.
Half the time it's malicious, I think. Half the time it's not. It's just, that's what we ask people. Are you done? I have the same line. I'm like, I have 7 kids or 6 kids or 8 kids. So I have 8 kids. So I told you I was done having kids. Would you even believe me? Like, I wouldn't believe me.
I can quit anytime I want.
Yeah, it's like I can quit anytime I want. Yeah, it's just like it's not really, And of course we do we'll see, whatever, we're getting older, blah blah blah. But we're open to it. That's what we say. But
I say I hope so, but we're getting a little long in the tooth, so I don't know. I don't know.
Got some really good one-liners out of this. You've really thought about this. You prepared
I'm proud of you, Steve.
Here's a case where use of language literally saved a life. Dan Miller, our friend in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, longtime leader, there's a couple that's walking into the abortion facility. He's trying to do the sidewalk counseling, and they don't respond. And he just says, well, God bless you both. And he said, God bless all three of you. And after completely ignoring him, she sticks her head back out the door and says, what did you say? Ended up choosing life.
That's great.
Exactly. And I have another example I can't let go without saying it. It was one of the best things. So these two really good friends of mine I met years ago here in College Station. They had a little daughter and a dog, and they were coming to visit me one time and stay with me. And as soon as they walked in the door, the three of them, the mom, the dad, and the daughter, they just had the biggest smiles on their faces. And so the dad goes, "We're so glad that you've welcomed the four of us here."
That's fun.
And I was like, where's the dog? I was looking for the dog. And then I realized, and I go, "Oh, are you pregnant?" And they go, "Yes, and we want you to be the godmother." And I was it was like the coolest thing.
That's
it was
really
the best
cool.
way. And I was like, that's how you do it.
That's really cool.
You acknowledge the life. So anyways.
The other thing that never gets old is taking the youngest in the family and putting the I'm an older brother, I'm an older sister.
Yes.
That never gets old.
Holding the ultrasound. Yeah. So cute. Well, I have another Seinfeld reference that I know you guys would love.
And by the way, it's Kramer, not George.
No,
I'm correcting you.
This is George. I promise. I just saw this.
It's Kramer, not George.
Okay.
I have this episode memorized.
Episode 3, season 3, episode 16.
Where Jerry thinks he's dating a Chinese woman?
No.
Donna Chang? Okay, this is the other episode.
It's another episode.
It is George.
Donna
Chang?
George says this quote after, it's totally different. After finding out that his fling missed her period, he says, "Oh my gosh, I'm a father. My boys can swim."
Yes, I remember that. That's a good one.
And I was like, listen to that, all pro-life in this Seinfeld episode. So
yeah, it's rare that you get a pro-life message at a Seinfeld.
Exactly.
They do mock divorce a lot. It's kind of funny when they're trying to date that married couple, and she's like, "We've just been married."
Oh, so terrible.
Jerry's like,
so
3
terrible.
years is a long time to be married because he wants to date her.
Yeah. They're trying to split them up. It's terrible. But then there's another one, Fast and Furious. One of the girls, it's a pro-life line. I caught it. Mia tells her brother and her boyfriend that she's pregnant. Her brother hugs both of them and says, "Our family just got bigger." Like, these are like little nuggets that I find in the culture sometimes. And I'm like, hey, look at that. They're acknowledging the child. So, but
This is from Fast and the Furious?
It's from Fast and the Furious 5.
Movie.
I
Believe
knew
it or not.
Vin Diesel was a better pro-lifer than your grandfather.
Vin Diesel is a pro-lifer.
Totally.
But we have a what to say
We
when.
do have a what to say when reference. Part one.
Talking in, part one.
Put away the second one.
What not to say, and you guys have a chapter on that. So it says, we are guilty of having committed all these violations. All of them, to some degree, are true, but they are either incomplete or insensitive and therefore counterproductive to our goal of winning the heart and the mind for life, which, again, is what I want to do.
And in there is, we believe that life begins at conception, and we don't.
We believe,
we know it does.
We believe,
Used to
or
be a belief.
this could be the next Beethoven, this could be the next Mother
I'm not
Teresa.
a fan of that.
Which we've said before, and it's like, but you could also say this could be the next Hitler, this could be the next whatever.
My kid's dumb as a brick.
Could be the next your grandfather who's...
But now he's got to cure cancer. Bad. And of course they could. And there's a good way to do those examples, but I think they're so sensational.
Yes.
And it's like, you aborted Beethoven.
Yes.
Well, I don't want to abort him.
Yeah.
I want to abort the poor minority kids. Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a lot to pin on a kid too.
It's a lot. You have to be a genius. I don't know. Yeah, so we got to be careful with that. That's all in what to say when, the first one. Okay, so we're going to continue this on the next episode.
Do you guys want to know when I was going to try to invent a new buzzword like bonus? Oh, like I got a new promotion at work. Bonus.
That's too close because it could have been a bonus at work. What
Okay, well, I got.
What if you're like
there's a new Doritos flavor.
bonus? Yeah, they're bringing back Surge. Bonus.
You thought it was a bad idea. You're a believer right now.
Yeah, I'm Riz. That's tight, man.
We need to wrap this up.
Heather's arguments are cold. Please rate, review, and share this podcast, and we will see you on the next episode where we will continue to discuss language, the dangers of it, and how we can fix our errors, which I will get working on ASAP. God bless you.